Hey everyone, Mark Scheeren here. So I want to talk a little bit about Henry rifles. You may have noticed that Big Woods has a relationship now with Henry rifles, and we're very excited about that. They are the quintessential sort of northeast lever action classic tracking rifle. And they also are fully made in America. Every part on this is made in America. And I started using them about 4 years ago, testing them, seeing how they performed. And one of the things I noticed, first of all, they have amazing customer service as a company. But one of the things I noticed was the quality. The gun is incredibly well built and has features that are smart, really smart. Now, I've been shooting lever actions for 42 years. I started with Marlins. I've shot some Winchesters, but I would say I was always a Marlin guy. And then along came Henry, and then they had their center fire rifles after they were making rim fires for a number of years. And the center fires were a little bit different because they were tube fed, right? Just like a 22, you slide the shells in this tube, and that's how you fed the gun. And it was a little bit clunky for tracking, only because if you're tracking, you like to be able to, sort of throw the shells in the side gate. So they didn't have a side gate, so that was the way you loaded and unloaded the gun. Or you could unload it, obviously, through the action like a standard lever action. So a few years back, they added the side gate. But they did something smart, and that is they left the tube feed part here. And why is that important? This is one of the advantages of a Henry rifle. What's nice about that is when you're done for the day, you slide this out, you dump out the shells, right? And then you jack the last shell out. So you don't have to drive all the shells through the action to unload the gun. And that's a feature that makes it so that this gun doesn't have any ancillary safeties. There's no crossbolt safety, there's no tang safety, there's just your hammer. And so it's incredibly safe. You have one type of safety. Now I want to talk about that for a minute because it's really cool. It's got a hammer without a half cock. Notice that the hammer sits down and it looks like it's sitting right on the firing pin. It's actually not sitting on the firing pin. This hammer is hollow. It's got a transfer bar safety system. So when you pull when it's in the cocked position and then you pull the trigger, a transfer bar slides up and makes the hammer full. Then it hits the firing pin, the gun goes off. You go like this, rack another shell, and as soon as you hit that trigger, the transfer bar comes up. Now, when the trigger isn't being pulled in the safe position, that is actually, the transfer bar slides down and the hammer is actually hollow surrounding the firing pin, so nothing can hit that firing pin. It's ingenious, really. It's like a revolver. So you know when it's unsafe because the hammer is down. There's no half cock position. It just sits just like that. And when it's cocked, you know it's cocked. So that's it. There's no other safeties, nothing to confuse a person. Now, another feature that I liked over the other brands was notice how the trigger guard is bigger. When you're cycling shells or you have gloves on, you want enough room in here to be able to work it. That's a small detail. Obviously, they added the side gate. In my case, I add a hammer spur even with open sights. Now, some of you know that I like to have a gun set up with a scope with removable mounts. And but this year I'm going to do something a little different. I had that for the first 4 days of hunting this year in the Adirondacks, but I went to just these high-vis sights, and I'm going to actually be changing out the front sight with a Skinner ramp, raising this a bit and then raising my back sight so that it's like the height of a peep sight. So you're going to see some different things from the team. 13 of us of the 22 team members on Big Woods Bucks are carrying these this year. That's how much we believe in the company. They're an amazing group of people, amazing factory, an incredible gun. The action, unlike other manufacturers of lever actions, is unbelievably smooth, but it's also very crisp in closing. It doesn't pop open. There's no spring tension popping it open like some other brands do, some of the cheaper brands that are out there. Also, the wood is American walnut. I think it comes from Ohio, if I remember right. I modified mine. I build my own butt plate for mine to shorten the length of pull. I use epoxy and I form it and I seal the back end of the gun. And obviously people always ask me, what is the tape for? We tape the end of our barrel for protection in case you trip or fall or stuff it into an embankment or something. So you don't want to plug your barrel with debris. So you have your piece of tape. If you fire the gun and then you're going after the game, you pull those pieces off because they now have a hole in them, and you have a supply of tape here on the end of your barrel. So you put another piece on. Besides that, there was really no need for modification. So just the length of pull, different sights. Right now, like I said, I have the high-vis sights, but I'll have a ramp with a fiber optic on the front that will raise this a touch. And that's it. It's ready to hunt. Weighs 7 pounds. This is the 360 Buckhammer, which there's a lot of fanfare about. I have a shell right here that you can see. And this one is really a unique shell because it's just a necked up 30-30. So it's the 30-30 case, necked up to 358. It's the same identical core-lock bullet that comes in a 35 Remington. It's about 180 feet per second faster, which is surprising. You would think that such a little shell would be slower than a 35 Remington, but it's not, just because by necking it up, you get a little more powder volume in there. But also, the pressures of this round are over 50,000 PSI, and a 35 Remington is somewhere around 32, if I remember right. I might have those figures off. But the point is because this is a new round, there are no old guns for it, so they don't have to regulate the pressure. So it's a more high pressure round. So you have a relatively small round that's throwing this 200 grain round point out at almost 2,200 feet per second. The 180 grain that they have, also a soft point core locked, goes 2,400 feet per second. So that's kind of a slow little carbine 30-06-ish feel of it in feet per second. So it's a 200-yard round, really. Probably 250 you could get out of it if you're accurate enough or have a good scope on this. So that's how mine's set up for now. People have asked me how come I took the scope off, and this is Austin's gun. He has it set up the way I had mine set up. I put the scope, this Skinner scope, which is an amazing scope for the money, best, absolutely the best, dollar per dollar. It fights way above its weight class. I would compare this to any $500, $600, $700 scope, and it'll compare equally to that, even though it's only under $300. So this scope is a 1x6, which is what I like, or a 1x4 for tracking. But the reason I took it off of mine is because early season and late season, I tend to go slower because the bucks are going slower. It's usually late season I'm tracking where the bucks are slow, and early season the bucks are still in a feeding pattern in their summer range and they're not really moving around much. So I'm not covering the distances, and at 53 years old I can't cover the 14, 20 mile days as easily as I used to. So for the rut tracking snow days, I have this gun, and then obviously I have in New York an early muzzleloader and a late muzzleloader. I don't think I have my muzzleloader in here, but it has the scope on it. So I put the scope on the muzzleloader because those are the times where I can carry a heavier gun in the beginning and end of the year when the bucks are going slower. And when I'm tracking, I'm going to be going light with the iron sights. I personally don't use a peep sight only because I'm a left eye dominant right hand shooter and I struggle with that. So let's talk about this setup. So this is Austin's Buckhammer. also a Henry. He's getting a dovetail blank. We haven't gotten that put in. He'll also have the ramp from Skinner put on, which will raise this for his peep sight. If you notice, there's a peep sight in here. So it's got a rail, a very elegant, it's not even a rail, it's really just a mount with specifically made for these tally steel rings with levers. And the scope comes off, and then it's a I'll show you actually, then it's a peep sighted gun. And yes, it does return to 0. Everybody freaks out and says, I couldn't trust that. So let's say you're out and about. You get into a really nasty swamp or the weather changes, and Austin's got his peep-sighted buck hammer. And then the scope can obviously go back on. You tighten the levers hand tight, and it's right back to 0. It'll be within an inch. And most of the bucks we're shooting are usually less than 60 yards. So look at the wood on that thing. Amazing checkering, laser cut, bordered. Not sharp, but good enough that you have a good grip. It comes with a good solid recoil pad, but it's soft. It's got the Henry logo in it. The metal is blued, exceedingly dark, but a matte finish. You notice it's not a very shiny gun, which is a smart thing for hunting. Here's another detail. All the levers are shiny, but that's not the point. They're worked and tumbled, so there's no sharp edges anywhere on them. And really well done, exceedingly well done. Comes with sling swivels, and the end cap makes it a little more accurate. Let's talk about accuracy. With this 200 grain, I should have brought one of the targets, but with that round, it really was hitting about 1.25 inches at 100 yards. When I put it in a Caldwell lead sled and used the scope. Iron sights, I hit about 3 inches. I'm going to hit something like this because that is a pretty big fiber optic on the front. Difficult to be really accurate with that. It's more of a running deer sort of scenario. So, I don't know. They're really beautiful guns. I think the team is excited to work with Henry. Their management is amazing. We had a stock break because of an accident a couple of days ago with one of the guns, and we got that stock in today in less than 2 days. They sent everything out, parts, whatever you need. Their service department is honestly the best I've ever dealt with. And I'm going to end with a story. So, years ago when I had my first Henry, I was up in Scheeren Lake and opening day of rifle season in the North Country. And I got out of the car and I didn't put the front swivel on properly. And as I swung out of the driver's side, the gun fell, snapped the front sight off, and then buckled. And I kind of tried to grab it, which actually threw the gun, and I broke the front stock as well. I mean, I really buggered up the gun good. I had never even hunted with it. It was its first hunt, and I was so pissed off at myself. I went into the hotel where I was staying, waited till they were open because at the office. I had my cell phone. I called Henry on a Saturday morning, I guess it was, at 9 o'clock in the morning. And Anthony Imperato, the president, answered the phone. And I said, because I recognized the Brooklyn accent or the New York City accent. And I said, is this? And he said, yeah, sometimes I'm in the office early. And he got me to the service department. The next day, at that hotel, I had a front sight and a forearm, the stock. And I thought to myself, sight unseen, on my word. I could have been just getting parts. I could have been ripping them off. Obviously, I wouldn't do something like that. But the point is, any other gun company I've ever worked with, sometimes they have to take pictures. You got to send in the parts. You got to send the gun in. They got to check. It wasn't like that. He's like, no problem. We'll take care of you. And they next dayed it up from Rice Lake, Wisconsin, or wherever the parts were coming from. And I had it, and I was hunting the next day. So, actually, I got it on a Monday morning. I called them that Saturday, so it was, I guess, one day after. But the point is they answered the phone. They took care of me. And that made me a fan forever. That's the kind of company they are. But I believe that's why the details exist in this gun. And I think also that's why Remington chose them to be the people who built this round with them. They partnered together to build the Buckhammer, so the gun and the ammunition all work. The other thing I want to say about the straight wall cartridge, so the 360 Buckhammer is a straight wall cartridge designed for straight wall states, right, that have the laws that require that there's no bottleneck to the cartridge case. That makes this thing load and unload like silk. You know, it's got a slight taper, but with that round nose bullet, imagine how it's like a torpedo going in there. It's beautiful. Really, really slick. So, we're excited, and I think that if it sounds like I'm singing their praises, I am, because I wouldn't choose a gun that doesn't work. I wouldn't choose a gun that isn't accurate. I wouldn't choose a gun that isn't reliable. And I certainly wouldn't choose a round that can't do the job for black bear. And probably at close range you could kill elk with it or anything like that size game. So, yeah, wonderful guns. Balance in the hand perfectly, like any lever action does. They all do that very well. The other thing, one last thing. I'm thinking of these things as I talk. The barrel, if you notice, it's a thicker barrel than most. Now, some of that may be because it's a .358 caliber bullet. But they didn't have to go this thick, and they did. And that makes it enormously stiff, and that I think is what gives it the accuracy. And they know how to build a barrel. So, that's the Henry deal, and we're very excited to work with them. So I hope you get one and go hunting with a Henry. Take care.